Yo, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy John, aka Spears here, and in today's YouTube video, I'm gonna go ahead and rank all of the weapons you guys have access to in Warzone based on the strongest meta, can compete, viable, don't play, and the meme/niche. I think you guys are gonna be a little bit surprised because I ran through this once just trying to get my bearings, figure out where I'm gonna put each gun. And honestly, as I was going through, I was really surprised as how many of them fell in the don't play category. I would like to say this, I am gonna go over some attachments for, you know, the strongest meta and the can compete, and some weapons that you guys might have forgotten about or might think, you know, maybe it doesn't really belong in this category and I got to kind of plead my case for it. But aside from that, this tier list is a little bit different from all of the other people that made them. The only two people that I'm really familiar with that made them is JGod and Ponyhoff. As you guys can see, he's here on the screen. You guys can go ahead and follow him on Twitter. He's actually the creator of this tier list. He cut out all of these things and put it all together. So shout out to him. He's a super valuable asset to the Call of Duty community. He does a lot of analytics and stuff like that for the weapons, similar to how JGod does it. So shout out to both of them. Links are in the description. That's where I got the idea for this video. And shout out to JGod for sending me the link to this tier maker, because this is going to make it 1,000 times easier for me. But anyway, this tier list that you guys are going to be watching is a little bit different than theirs. It's not solely based off the numbers. Obviously, I think you're going to see a lot of guns kind of overlapping between our list here in the strongest meta and the can compete meta, just because based off the numbers, you're obviously going to get a lot of the same things. But for me, I'm basing this off of, you know, feel of the gun and how it performs in game, not solely based off of the numbers. I consider myself to be slightly above average. I have like a 3.5, 3.75 KD. I have a couple hundred wins. I've placed decent in, you know, a lot of tournaments. So I, you know, definitely, you know, frag out every now and again, and I play pretty consistently, and I keep up with the metas and what all the good players are using and everything like that. And I try to, you know, replicate that. And I think that's honestly the best way to play Warzone, is to try to replicate others' loadouts and their playstyles. So I'm going to be going over what you guys should be using with the strongest meta and the can compete. Again, this is not based off of numbers. You guys might be a little bit surprised based off of what you guys see in the categories, but for the most part, this is simply based off of what you guys are probably going to have the most success with in game. And just is like, you know, how easy is it to use the recoil, the fire rate, the damage, the TTK, all that. Like, it is going off the numbers to an extent, but you know, there's some guns that have crazy TTKs like the AS Val. And I think you guys are going to be surprised where I go ahead and throw that gun. And I'll talk about each gun a little bit more in depth, or, you know, with a little bit more of a description so you guys can get a handle on it. But I think the best way to do this, I went through this already and I tried to do it by category. And honestly, it was really, really confusing and hard for me to keep up with. So we're going to go through ARs to LMGs to marksman rifles, SMGs, shotguns, snipers, pistols, launchers, and other stuff. So that's how we're going to go through this video. So I'll go ahead and leave timestamps in the description so you guys can go ahead and find that if that's what you're looking for. Anyway, guys, though, if you haven't already dropped a like, I'd very much appreciate that. Subscribe if you guys are brand new around here. I'm very sorry about the long-winded intro. I appreciate all the love lately on the channel. Without further ado, guys. But anyway, guys, if you haven't already dropped a like, I'd very much appreciate that. Subscribe if you guys are brand new around here. Without further ado, let's get into ranking all of the guns inside of Call of Duty Warzone. So starting off with the AK-47 Cold War AK. So I know that was kind of repetitive. Going into this one, this weapon is one that is going to surprise a lot of people. I am going to go ahead and throw it in the can compete / off meta category. This is one of those guns where I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a description because I'm sure you guys are confused. The AK-47 from Cold War is pretty horrible as an AR. As an SMG, it's actually pretty good. If you guys run it with a sniper, I don't really recommend using it with, you know, using it as a substitute for the FFAR in particular. Like if you're running, you know, let's say you're running the meta weapon, which we obviously know is the AUG. Big spoiler alert here. It's going to be the AUG. I would not really run the AUG with the AK-47. That's just me. I do, however, like pairing it with a sniper because it's it's surprisingly good medium range and close range. I do recommend putting the 45 round base mag on. Don't go ahead and put on the 65 round speed mag or the 45 round speed mag. You want that 45. The 45 is enough for close range engagements. And also it will keep the ADS significantly faster. I do recommend using, you know, the Spetsnaz grip for that horizontal and vertical recoil, the skeletal stock, so that way you guys get the ADS movement speed, obviously the groove suppressor, and then the second to last barrel is the one that I do recommend that you guys run on this. That is just my setup that I'm using, and I've honestly had success using it as kind of an SMG for that close to mid-range. It doesn't really do spectacular close range, but that mid-range is really where it shines. If you guys can place your shots well, honestly, with some of that vertical recoil, you automatically get like 1 or 2 headshots in a gunfight. So you would be surprised. For the AK-47 MW, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the viable category. For a little bit before the Cold War integration, it was pretty solid. If you put a VLK on it, you could actually run it like the pre-patch Kilo, but with today's metas, it really doesn't compete that well. So I'm going to put it in the viable category because it's not awful, but it's definitely one of those guns, you know, if you wanted to switch it up and not have too tough of a time, you could literally set the AK-47 up as if it was a year-old Kilo with the VLK, and you'd be surprised how much success you guys have with it. If you guys are getting bored, highly recommend you give that a try. The AMAX, I mean, we're going to go ahead and throw that in the meta category. I really don't see the AMAX being a, you know, super strong contender for the meta, but in terms of full auto weapons at the current state of the game, the AMAX is definitely up there, right? Because the game's dominated by burst weapons at the moment. The AMAX is up there. You're going to build it out like you build out any MW, you know, AR, VLK, monolithic, longest barrel, biggest, well, not biggest magazine, because Kilo, you don't want the 100 round, but the biggest magazine for the AMAX, and then the Commando foregrip. That's going to be your best setup for this, because that's going to get you that balance between speed and damage, which is a big thing inside of Warzone that people, I don't really think, you know, take into account. Moving on, the AN94, I think it is viable. I think a lot of people want to see it here in the can compete / off meta just because it has, you know, really low recoil. But in reality, it just doesn't have the damage that it needs to have in order to compete, you know, fantastically. Like, there's just better options. That's what it just comes down to. In a lot of gunfights, you're going to lose a one-on-one, you know, if you both start shooting at the same time. If you're running AN94 and this guy's running pretty much anything else, for the most part, the AS Val, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the viable category. I know that I'm sure this is different from a lot of other YouTubers tier lists, because a lot of people are probably going to put it in the can compete / off meta just because it has a high damage. But in reality, I'm going off of usability here. This gun is not like unusable. It has an insanely small magazine size. The reload isn't that great, and the recoil is honestly just a little bit wonky. So if you guys are going to go ahead and use this gun, I mean, it's only good as an SMG in reality. And even then, it's just doesn't really have what it takes, you know, to compete. If you guys are in solos, it might work. If you're in duos, you're pushing it a little bit. But in trios and quads, which is pretty much all I play because that's what I have the most fun playing, I do not recommend this gun. You're going to run out of ammo insanely quick. Don't recommend it. Moving on to the FAL, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the can compete / off meta. It's one of those guns people kind of forgot about. It got that one nerf and people just stopped using it. It's incredibly good. Like, if you guys have a fast trigger finger, throw it on as a SMG. It still absolutely melts close range. People will be surprised. The FAR 83, I'm going to go and put that in viable. It's got weird recoil. Don't really recommend using it. FFAR, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and just throw that in the meta. I don't think any words need to be said about that. The FRS 556, I'm putting it in the don't play category. It could be in the viable category. It has similar damage profile to the AUG and the M16, but the problem is just that, you know, I don't play it just because there's the AUG and the M16. Like, it's just, there's no point, you know, there's just simply better options. The Grawl, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the, I'm honestly teeter-tottering here. I'm going to go can compete, because honestly, the Grawl can compete. People will be surprised. One of those guns, again, you know, it got that slight nerf and people just forgot about it. And they stopped using it. The Groza, I'm going to go up here and throw it in this category, the strongest / meta. This is something I think is going to, you know, throw a lot of people off, just because the Groza is one of those guns that you'd be surprised if the FFAR gets nerfed. I mean, I'm saying if, because we would all imagine that it's going to get nerfed, but based on the historical landscape of Warzone in terms of nerfs and buffs, I'm going to go ahead and say, we'll see. I'm hoping the FFAR gets nerfed. We'll see. But if it does, the Groza is that sleeper. That's something you guys got to keep your eyes out for. Absolutely disgusting. The Kilo, I'm going to go ahead and put it at can compete / off meta. People forget about the Kilo because, you know, the AUG's out there. I put the Kilo on last night and I was pleasantly surprised at how well it was working. People are not used to, you know, getting hit with a continuous spray of a full auto weapon. They're used to the burst. Like, people have been conditioned inside of Warzone to get hit with a burst and then kind of just accept it. So they're used to the TTK kind of being, you know, really sporadic in terms of, like, you get hit with a burst, then you get a second to breathe, then you get hit with a burst, then you get a second to breathe, hit with a burst, and then you're dead, right? Because we're going to assume most average players, they're not hitting every shot out of their AUG burst. Even me, you know, it takes like 2, 3, 4 bursts sometimes to kill somebody. But the Kilo is just boom, pedal to the metal, flame to the fire, whatever the heck the saying is you guys want to have. It's surprisingly good because it's full auto. It doesn't do an incredible amount of damage, but the fact that you can keep the pressure on the enemy and it doesn't really give them time to heal or maneuver or anything like that, you'd be surprised how many people panic and actually end up, how many kills you end up getting. And in terms of thirsting people forget how quickly you can thirst with the Kilo, because we're used to thirsting with the AUG, which over range, thirsting with the AUG is very difficult because of the burst aspect of it. But the Kilo, if you guys set it up with that VLK monolithic longest barrel, 60 round mag, and the commando foregrip, you're going to have crazy success. I've been running this a lot more lately. It's one of those sleeper guns. I'm going to go ahead and put the Krig in the viable category. It's all right. I don't recommend it. Definitely better options. The M13, viable category. Again, no recoil. If you're a lower skilled player, not lower end, but lower skilled player, can't really handle recoil much, you know, you might want to go ahead and throw the M13 on. You might find that you have more success with it, but I think you're better off, you know, using the Kilo. It's kind of like a little bit stronger M13. The M4A1, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the viable category. It's definitely good, definitely awesome, but I think the M4 has seen its day, sadly, and unfortunately. It just really, it can compete, in my opinion, but there's just better options, right? This is one that's near and dear to my heart, but there's just simply better options. I'm going to go ahead and throw the Odin in the viable category as well, along with the Ram 7. I mean, the Ram 7 could be possibly off meta if you throw it as an SMG, but in reality, I mean, if you're going to be using the Ram 7 as an SMG, you might as well just use the FFAR at that point. The Scar, I'm going to go throw in the don't play category. Don't recommend it. I know there's some people out there. I get it all. That's probably one of my more requested guns. People love to see people run the Scar. I'm going to just come out and just be honest with you guys. If you guys are using the Scar, look at yourself in the mirror and just try to get real, because that gun sucks. There's literally almost no redeeming qualities to it. Like, you have all of you have these guns available to you. There is no reason you should be using the Scar. Like, there is absolutely no reason at all. If you're going to use the Scar, then you might as well use the Odin, because the Odin is better than the Scar. And it's like pretty similar. Pretty bouncy, slow fire rate, but hits like a freaking train. So going on, the last AR is going to be the XM4. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the viable category. You could definitely use it. I put out some loadout videos with the SUSAT optic with the XM4, and you'd be surprised how good it was. And obviously, you're going to want to run it like any Cold War AR, you know, some sort of optic, then the agency suppressor, the longest barrel, the biggest mag without the fast mag, because the fast mags hurt ADS, and then the vertical and horizontal speed grip that you guys are going to throw on there. Going into the LMGs, this one is a little bit spicy. This one will definitely be a lot faster because it's more cut and dry. It's not nearly as complicated as this. So going into the LMGs for the Bruin, I'm going to go ahead and throw the Bruin in the viable category. Again, really good. People just forget about it. The Finn is one that you just shouldn't play. The Holger is one that you just shouldn't play. The M60 is one you just shouldn't play. M91 is definitely viable. One of those guns, a lot of people never really mess with it. It's insanely good. You'd be surprised. If you're looking for guns to switch it up, this is the category, the viable category. The MG34, it is pretty good. It's just, it can't compete. It just doesn't keep up. Throwing it in that category. The can't compete / might be meta. I'm going to go ahead, or off meta, I'm going to go ahead and throw the PKM in there. I mean, the PKM is just disgusting. People forget about the PKM as well, just because it's been out for a while. That gun is kind of crazy. RPD, I'm going to throw it. It could probably be viable, but again, just better options out there. I don't really recommend using it. And that kind of is where the SA87 falls in as well. The Stoner, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the viable category because it's definitely good. I just think the strafe speed when you're shooting makes it a little bit wonky, makes it a little bit odd, and, you know, uncomfortable to use, just because you can't really place your shots that well, in my opinion. And again, there's just better options out there. Going ahead, all the crossbows are going to go ahead and go into the meme category, just because they are not horrible. Well, the Cold War crossbow is pretty bad. It will not one shot if you have full plates. The MW crossbow, you have the exploding bolts, so it could actually be viable in some situations. But for the most part, I mean, if you could be running around, you know, with an AUG and an FFAR, why are you going to run around with an AUG and a crossbow? You know, you're memeing at that point. That's just the reality of the situation. The EBR-14, don't use it. The thing is very, very stinky. The Kar98, I'm going to put it into a meta weapon. Even though the Kar98 has been nerfed and it doesn't do nearly as much damage or like consistent one-shot headshots, it's still up there in the meta, in my opinion, just because if you can get good with the Kar98, the capabilities that you have in Warzone is insane. The ability to one-shot people off of head glitches, or, you know, I've won a ton of gunfights with my Kar98 versus an AUG, you know, where if I had any other gun, even if I had an AUG, I would not have won the gunfight. But if you guys can get good at hitting headshots consistently, highly recommend the Kar98. It's pretty much my main gun that I've been using lately. The MK2, don't use it. I've had some people come in say it's as good as the Kar98. Definitely don't recommend. Don't even give it a try. It's definitely poo-poo. The SKS, honestly, It's viable. A gun a lot of people forget about. The SKS actually does like 175 damage if you hit them in the head. So if you hit somebody in the head with the SKS, it takes all of their armor off. They're essentially a 2-shot kill. It's kind of incredible. It's just one of those guns people don't use anymore. It's a sleeper, I promise. It does run on sniper ammo, which makes it a little bit weird. And then the SPR, I'm going to go ahead, can't compete in off meta just because, you know, the SPR really is kind of like the little brother to the Kar 98. The Kar 98 is just slightly better. The SPR definitely does more damage, but the SPR, I do have more consistently one-shot headshots, but the ADS and kind of the maneuverability, the movability of the gun brings it down a notch and kind of put it in the can't compete category. For the AK-74U, I'll throw it in the viable. I don't recommend using it. That's just me, but I know a lot of people really like it, and it is in reality viable. If you use it constantly, it's good, but it's just, you know, obviously there's just better options. The AUG from MW, I'm going to throw it in the viable category. If you guys run this as an SMG with the 5.56 conversion, it's actually kind of nasty. It's surprisingly good. That's where the Bison's going to fall as well. This is a sleeper gun. Ground loot last season was really surprising. I think people, you know, forget about the Bison in general. The Bullfrog, honestly, I'm throwing it in the off meta because this is a gun that when SMGs do make a comeback, this is going to be one of the meta weapons. So it's good to have it leveled up. It's good to have it, you know, it definitely can compete. The ground loot Bullfrog in the loot pool is probably one of my favorite ground loot weapons. It's a little bit weird at long range, but if you guys custom build that Bullfrog and you guys can hit headshots consistently, the Bullfrog is absolutely disgusting. The Fennec, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the viable. The reload is just too slow for it to fall into the off meta / can't compete. So that's why it's falling there. The ISO, I'm putting the don't play. You just really shouldn't use the ISO. It's just not, there's just better options. The KSP, this thing's absolutely trash. I would literally rather run around with the starting pistol than a burst SMG. Like, it was a cool thought and it just is not good at all. LC10, definitely viable. No recoil, decent damage, not great, but it works. The Mac 10, that's an off meta. It used to be meta. It's like ever so slightly outside the meta. It just can't compete with the FFAR, unfortunately. And I swear to God, they stealth nerfed it again because I shot somebody yesterday without armor, hit them like 7 times and they didn't die. And I was like pretty close, so it was weird. Milano, just don't use it. Why they came out with a reactive pack for it, beyond me. The Cold War MP5, definitely viable. Better options out there. The MP5 from MW, definitely viable. TTK, too slow. If the TTK was ever so slightly faster, it would definitely be off meta because, again, another gun a lot of people forgot about. Absolutely fantastic. Definitely recommend it. The Uzi, don't use it. It's really good. It's not even really good. It's definitely viable, but like there's just, don't use it. You have all of these other guns that you could be using that you should not use the Uzi. Moving on to the AUG, I mean, this is like the god of all gods when it comes to guns. This thing will literally turn any random player into Thanos, where they just snap their finger and the enemy's dead in like the blink of an eye. Kind of incredible. So I'm going to go with the AUG in Cold War as the strongest meta. The DMR, I'm going to go ahead and throw it as off meta. Again, one of those guns, it got nerfed. If you're a better player and have a decent trigger finger, definitely recommend throwing that on there if you're trying to have a little bit of fun. It is tougher to use when you guys compare it to the AUG because you have to spam it a lot more, but still a lot of fun to use and definitely viable. M16, this one's going to be a little spicy dicey, a little bit weird. If you guys are on keyboard and mouse, it will be a meta because the AUG sucks on keyboard and mouse. But if you're not on keyboard and mouse and you're on controller, it's definitely off meta. If you guys are playing on controller, the AUG is 100% the best weapon that you should be using right now. And if you're saying it's not because you're not good with it or you're not good with burst weapons, you know, go into Plunder, take 30 minutes out of your day, go ahead and practice with the AUG. You know, I have class setups with the AUG. Go ahead, look at those, get the attachments. But I promise you guys, if you guys get decent with the AUG, even if you're bad with the AUG, you're going to be better than you are with any of the guns below it. It's just so far out of the league of any other weapon in the game. It's just insane. The Type 63, I'll throw it in the viable just because similar to the SKS, you know, it does a decent amount of damage, but you got to spam it. 725 is definitely a meme gun. You know, go ahead, throw the freaking sniper scope on it with the slugs. Definitely a meme. Gallo, off meta for sure, only because a lot of us controller players play auto tac sprint. I struggle a lot with shotguns. I do think it's good, but again, it's limited range and the reload is incredibly slow. The Hauer, don't use it. That thing sucks. You literally, it's probably the most inconsistent shotgun ever. You shoot people and they just don't die. Jack 12, don't use it. Trash. Almost no redeeming qualities. Upsetting because the AA-12 used to be awesome, but in this game, it's very stinky. Model 680, also stinky. Don't use. Don't recommend. Moving on, we got the Origin 12. It's definitely viable. I don't think it's off meta just because the Gallo is like an Origin 12, but on steroids. Although the Origin 12 does have a magazine, so the reload's a little bit faster, but I don't know if I'd throw it in the off meta category. It's definitely viable. R9 shotgun, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the can compete / off meta. Again, one of those guns that got nerfed that people just forget about. But the R9, if you put the fire breath on, it's still disgusting. People, again, forgot about it. Very, very good. Street sweeper, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in viable. It's full auto. Well, actually, I'm going to put it in the not viable. It's definitely, in terms of TTK stuff, it's viable. But any normal, decent, player is not going to use it. It's full auto. Great. The reload, it takes 18 seconds to reload the gun. It's just not realistic. It's unfortunate that it's like that. Just not realistic. Don't recommend it. The Rogue, I'm going to go ahead. It would be viable because it's got the fire breath. But if you're going to be using a fire breath off meta shotgun, you're better off using the R9, as you guys can see. The AX50, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the viable category. It's definitely viable, just not the greatest thing that you guys could be using. There's definitely better options. Can I zoom this out a little bit? Definitely better options to be using without a shadow of a doubt. Dragunov, I would put it in the don't play, but I've definitely memed with it before. HDR, definitely off meta. This is kind of like the go-to sniper. Again, Kar 98 is definitely going to be better than the HDR. So that's why it's on the off meta, because the meta for snipers is realistically the Kar 98. Going on to the M82, definitely viable, and it's definitely fun. I do like using it. It's probably one of the guns that I pull out of this pool more frequently. It's one of my favorite guns. I definitely recommend it. The Pellington is definitely a meme. I mean, you guys can say what you want. Custom Pellington's good. I'm going to hear it in the comment section. Listen, I don't care. You pick that thing up off of freaking ground loot, and you're not doing anything. You might as well just be throwing wet noodles at the enemies because they just laugh at you. It just takes their armor off. You aim a foot above their head and it's still not a headshot. It's just incredible. I don't know what the hell they did that gun. It's just god freaking awful. The Rytech, it's a meme. All right, some people want to use it because it shoots exploding rounds. It's a meme. Aims in slow. People aren't gonna be happy about that. It is what it is. Tundra, definitely. I mean, off meta only because HDR is definitely better than Tundra. But in my mind, HDR to Tundra, they're essentially the equivalent from MW to Cold War. The Tundra is the Cold War version of that HDR. The pistols, I mean, honestly, don't use any of the pistols. They're pretty useless. There's a few exceptions, which is these 4 exceptions. The Diamatti is definitely viable. I mean, I got actually, I'm gonna put it in off meta because if you guys get Ghost and your Ghost loadout, every Ghost loadout for the most part should have the Diamatti as a secondary. Very, very good. It's just, since they nerfed it, it's not really in meta. The M19 is definitely viable. This is a gun nobody really found out about almost ever. And if you put that with dual welds and the lasers, crazy. I mean, you will absolutely shred the bejesus out of everybody. Renetti, viable. It's a burst. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. The snake shot, viable. People forget about the snake shot. You can get Ghost with the snake shot. And in buildings, it's still inconsistent, but it's still good. I'm going to throw the snake shot on this morning stream because honestly, going through this list, I forgot how good the snake shot was. It's actually decent and nobody's used it in a while. So nobody knows if it got stealth nerf or buffed for that matter. So we'll have to find out. The melees, I'm going to put it in viable. It's kind of a meme, but I mean, if somebody's running around with those effing Cali sticks, bro, those things hit you so fast and so hard, you just vaporize. It's incredible. The shield, I would put it in the viable category, but it's definitely, you see more people meme with it than anything. The Sigma, I'm going to use it and put it in the don't play. The Joker, don't play it. The M79, definitely don't play it. The Pila, definitely don't use it. I know between the Sigma and the Pila, one of them locks on, and one of them locks on and is free fire. Don't recommend it. There's just better options. Shooting a helicopter out of the air, everybody's going to jump out. You don't need the lock on. It's not going to really help you that much, or they're going to drop the flares. Don't recommend either of those on the loadout. The RPG from MW, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the off meta. RPG from MW is pretty solid. The RPG from Cold War, I'm putting it in the meta. People don't realize if you run that AUG with an RPG and Ghost, it's kind of insane because that RPG will one-shot you with splash damage. I'm hesitant to even put this in the video because I don't want to get RPG'd because I got RPG'd yesterday and it was not fun, but it's definitely one of those guns people are sleeping on. The Strela, I'm going to put it on off meta because even though it has that hit scan ability, it shoots super fast, super far, super straight, all that, instantly it's like a sniper. I would much rather have the RPG for building situations. If you guys are shooting at berthas and stuff, throw the Strela on. If you guys go ahead and do a little bit of damage to if you shoot one FFAR clip into a bertha and then shoot it with a Strela, it will blow up. People are dumbfounded by it all the time. they're confused, they don't see a comment, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I've been talking really, really long. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I wanted to go through and kind of give my thoughts and feelings on each gun and rank them, you know, somewhat quickly. I know I spend a lot of time on the ARs, but that's just because they're the most important in my opinion, and that's what you guys are going to be using mostly. Let me know. I'm going to leave the link to the tier maker in the description, so if you guys want to go ahead and make this, you know, tier maker, feel free to do that. Take a screenshot, go ahead and tweet it at me at Spiros_OG. I'd love to see where you guys rank the weapons and kind of where, you know, the community's heads at, how you guys are feeling about the guns inside of Warzone. I might do a kind of tier list in the future if you guys like this, where I go ahead and rank, you know, where I would like to see the guns. Maybe in the future, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, though, guys, I hope that you guys enjoy. If you did, don't forget to drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you guys are brand new around here. A lot of love on the channel lately, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. So let's keep the energy going. Let's keep moving forward. But anyway, guys, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.